The reality is a $200,000 system and a $20 notebook can both return for you on your farm. I want solutions looking for technology, not technologies looking for solutions. I think artificial intelligence is the biggest breakthrough for the dairy industry since the TMR. The total mixed ration was a massive change in how we managed cows. And I think artificial intelligence is also that level of change.
Welcome to Holstein Connections, where we share the latest stories, insights, and news from Holstein Association USA and beyond. The largest dairy cattle breed association in the world, Holstein Association USA provides leadership, information, and services to help dairy producers worldwide be successful. Whether you're in the barn, on the road, or just tuning in for your dose of dairy news, we're glad you're here. This is Holstein Connections. Welcome back to Holstein Connections. I'm Emily Bosch. On the podcast today, we're sharing Dr. Jeffrey Bewley's Holstein Horizons presentation, recorded during the recent National Holstein Convention. He explored a timely topic: how dairy producers can evaluate technology investments and identify the tools that deliver value on the farm. Rather than focusing on the newest gadgets, Dr. Bewley shared practical advice for assessing return on investment, implementing technology successfully, and leveraging emerging tools to improve management and decision-making. Let's dive in.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here today to talk to you about technologies. I'm not here to talk about all the different technologies that are out there. We've done talks like that before. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what do you need to do to think about when you're thinking about investing in technologies and trying to make them work on farm, along with a few ideas on some things that you can do technology-wise that may not cost quite as much, including some discussion, specific instructions on how to best take advantage of large language models. So if you're not using large language models, things like ChatGPT yet, hopefully after this, you'll at least be interested in seeing what they're all about. So when we think about any kind of a new technology that comes out, there's always a question about how much is it going to pay back and how fast is it going to pay back? And that's extremely important. And it seems like every week there's a new technology or a new piece of software that comes across your desk, right? There's lots and lots of new stuff coming out, and it's going to always be that way. There's going to continue to be many, many more innovations that come about. And you have to assess which ones of these should I think about investing in for my particular farm. It's easy to look at the price tag and see how much something costs. It's not always easy to see how much that's going to return and how quickly it's going to return. And I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that some of the technologies that cost the least actually bring back the most. Getting involved in technology does not have to mean that we're going to spend 6 figures or 7 figures on a technology. And I have some specific ideas to talk about later, things that don't cost nearly that. So the reality is a $200,000 system and a $20 notebook can both return for you on your farm. And as you know, we do a lot of work with technologies at the WKU Smart Holstein Lab. Just a reminder, if you're not following what we're doing there, to do that, we look at a lot of different technologies and work hands-on with these technologies to understand what they can and cannot do. There's a wide range of what's possible for technologies. Some technologies don't cost much per cow. Some are more moderate, like that kind of wearable category is probably in the middle there in terms of pricing. And then some really involve more capital investments if you're thinking about getting into a robotic milking system or a full TMR delivery system, that sort of thing. What are the questions that we need to start thinking about asking when we're looking at new technologies? The first one, which is kind of basic, but I think we need to always keep this in mind, is this technology really ready for the field? And I work with a lot of technologies that I can tell you are not ready for the field. That's part of what we do with the Smart Holstein Lab, is try to work with some of those on the cutting edge. And not all these technologies are ready for the field. There needs to be some kind of validation showing that they really do what they say that they're going to do. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be able to withstand the conditions of a barn, not just in a trial in one setting. So many times I still see technologies, they come to me and they've never even put it on a cow yet. So it's really different when we put these devices or systems in a barn on a cow. Support is absolutely critical. It's probably the first question that I'm going to ask of a technology provider, but what level of support is there? Is there somebody that's going to be there for you when something doesn't go right? And I can assure you, with technologies, there's a lot of times when things don't go right. And we need to make sure that the technology remains connected. It doesn't do any good if we don't have that continual flow of information. Another important thing to remember is that data is not the same as information. Sometimes we're just getting data, and not all data is useful. In fact, some of it is quite not useful. Lots of technologies make data, but not as many make decisions. It's important to remember that whatever technology we invest in, it needs to help us in making our lives better in some way. That may be by helping us make a decision. It may be by replacing some kind of form of labor. But I had somebody from Denmark email me yesterday, and she asked me, what do you think the main reason for technology failure is in the livestock industry? And my answer was probably not what she expected. My answer was lack of a value proposition, meaning that was interesting, but there wasn't anything that made it worthwhile for a producer to buy it. And there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of technology that's interesting, but not useful. So we have to keep in mind that if we're getting something that provides data, it has to be something that helps us to make a better decision. And then we have to look very specifically at the cost to benefit. When we think about the cost, it's important that we think about all the costs. It's not just that first check that you write. Here's the investment cost. We also have to think about, are there annual fees? Is there a software license that we have to pay for? Does it take labor to manage it? Labor comes with a cost. Is there work that we have to do or time that we have to spend for training or money that we have to spend to install the technology? And how does it fit with all the other systems in our operation? Then, of course, it's more exciting to think about the potential benefits. Maybe we can invest in a heat detection technology that provides us fewer days open. Maybe we have reduced disease cost. Maybe we have labor costs that reduce. It's nice when we gain production, or we have cows that last longer. But we always have to be thinking about that benefit to cost ratio. And sometimes I'm amazed at how many times that's only a gut feel and never actually sitting down and trying to look and put a spreadsheet together to try to assess whether or not something makes economic sense to invest in. The next question I think we have to ask is, does this particular technology fit within my operation? Not the operation in the brochure. Does it fit what I need? Something might make sense for a 2,000 cow dairy that doesn't make sense for a 200 cow dairy. Something might make sense for your dairy that doesn't make sense for your neighbor's dairy for various reasons. We need to make sure it fits the specifics of your operation. Another thing that I think is often overlooked with technologies is that the people are the key to success with technologies. And I think whether these are different people or the same person, there needs to be different people playing different roles on the farm. One is the champion. The champion is the one that's kind of rah-rah. Look at this. This is going to be amazing for us. Look at what this technology can do. They get everybody excited about it. And then there's the skeptic. The skeptic is just as important as the champion. The skeptic says, well, wait a minute. Does that really make sense? Is that data really telling me something meaningful? The skeptic is really important. They can be the same person, but it's important that we have some level of skepticism with these technologies. And then I think this is the last person that's probably most important, particularly when we get in larger operations. There's a tendency that the herd manager or the owner is making the big decision, but the person that's actually using the data, the calf manager or the person feeding the calves or the person doing the milking, has no role in that, and they're the ones that actually have to use the data, the responder. The responder is a critical part of that technology implementation on the farm. Another thing that I think we should think about when we think about technologies is to start small and then scale up. We don't always have to go in and put a technology in every pen or on all 4,000 cows. We can put it on one cow or one pen or one problem first. When we work with something new at the Smart Holstein Lab, after many times of messing this up, I now make sure that we only put it on one or two cows before we put it on all the cows, because too many times we're re-putting it on all the cows. And then set some deadlines for when you're going to assess whether or not it's actually working. Make sure that we think about how the technology folds into your daily routine. How are you going to use it? When are you going to look at the information? And make sure that you plan for service, upkeep, and the fact that technologies always change and there's always a need to upgrade to the next version of software or firmware or whatever. Make sure that we think about how we take the data and turn it into information. A sensor will often tell us that something's wrong with a cow well before what we would see. But if we wait until what we see before we do anything, we don't gain any value there. So we have to try to utilize the technology for what it's intended to do, which may be a change in the way that we manage our operations. So what are some do's and don'ts to think about for technology adoption? We do need to make sure we define the problem before buying it. Is this something that's going to help me for my operation? Too often, I think there's a tendency to look at the shiny new toy and say, that's a toy that I need. But the question should be, is there something going on your farm that there might be a solution that can help with? I want solutions looking for technology, not technologies looking for solutions. Again, start small, expand gradually. Make sure that we train all the employees that are going to use the system. That's often overlooked, is making sure that the people that are involved with using the data are actually trained on how to use it. Make sure we respond to the alerts and make sure that we validate that it is indeed working on our particular operation. Don't buy a technology looking for a problem. That does not work. Don't expect technologies or artificial intelligence to replace poor management. Don't ignore the alerts until the point that they're meaningless. So many times I see the technology data and I see the alerts come across, and then I see the cow and she's no longer with us. It's a little too late at that point to do something with that alert was telling us. Make sure that we don't try to mix data that's not meant to be mixed together, and don't reach the point of trusting the tool over your own eyes. Years ago, when GPS systems first started coming out, there was an episode of The Office where Michael was trying out his new GPS, and he kept following the GPS until he ran into the lake because it told him to keep going that way. That's trusting the data without using your common sense, right? So we can do that with technologies too, that they can tell us something and it's not really what's going on with that animal. Specifically, I do want to talk about some technologies or categories of technologies that I think that fit into that technologies that pay arena. And the first one that I think we can all confidently say now fits into that area of technologies that pay is the wearable sensor area. And wearable sensors, we can put them in many places on the cow. We can put them on the neck. We can put them in the ear. We can put them on the leg. We can put them in the rumen. Maybe we don't always call that a wearable sensor, but if it's in the rumen, a bolus or something, I categorize that within that. But these technologies are mature at this point. They really work well, and they provide a lot of valuable information. How many of you have some kind of a wearable technology on your operation today? Lots of hands. Lots of hands. Well over half the cows in the country today have some kind of a wearable technology. And we could get into a long discussion about which one's the best, which one gives us the best information, and I don't think there's a clear winner there. Obviously, if I were working for a particular company, I would say that mine was the winner. In the end, I think there are multiple winners in this arena. There are probably a dozen different technologies that fit into this wearable category that work really, really well. This is a winner today. This is not something we have to wait for. Somebody told me not long ago, isn't it amazing how quickly this technology has come to be commonly used on dairies? And it's not been fast. Like, I was working with these technologies 20 years ago. This technology is not new. It's mature now. 20 years ago, when we first started working with accelerometers, it's taken a while to get to where it is today. Some of the things that we see now coming with machine vision, I think, fit into this area of technologies that can pay off quickly. Cameras, for example. This camera system is one that we have at the Smart Holstein Lab. It monitors the people in the parlor to help coach and identify animal mishandling events. Feed management software. How many of you have feed management software of some kind in your operation? In my mind, this is number two. Herd management software is the first thing we should have. Feed management software is the second thing we should have. Feed is by far the largest cost in your operation. And there's a huge opportunity to improve the profitability of the operation by better managing our feed. Now, I will admit, I don't find this as exciting as some of the other data that's out there because I'm not into nutrition so much. But nutrition is extremely important for the profitability of your operation. And I think feed management is the second most important technology you can think about behind herd management software. There are other types of systems that I think can be useful that provide value without providing data. Not everything's about data. This system is one that we have that's a artificial intelligence system that's used to detect birds in the feed bunk. So you can see it detects the birds in the feed bunk, and then it shoots a laser at the birds in the feed bunk to coax them out of the feed bunk. It really works well at doing this, and they don't seem to get used to it like if you've ever put an owl in the barn or some noise like that. They tend to get used to that. There's the randomness associated with this movement that they don't get accustomed to. And this is not a terribly expensive technology. Sometimes it's about processes. So one of the technologies that we put in the Smart Holstein Lab that's provided the most return is an automated foot bath delivery system. So it actually mixes the solution. Some of you probably have these types of systems. There's more than one out there. These can be extremely valuable, even though we don't necessarily get any data from that system. Or a system that helps manage the people, so an automatic time clock. These are all things that are not that expensive. Now I want to shift gears more into some general categories and not speak specifically to particular brands, but I think there's a tendency to skip to the big dogs first and forget about some of the little things. So if we're thinking about technologies, one of the simple things we can invest in, and many of you have done this, is just using cameras to monitor areas on the barn. It's a camera to watch your calving pen, to be able to look at cows live. There's no data, you're just looking at it to say, are there cows calving right now? Or it's a security system, or it's in your parlor. These cameras are really, really inexpensive, and they can help in a lot of ways without investing a lot of money. Within the area of computer vision, I hope that in a few years we're talking about our Build a Better Cow system being one of those areas that provides value. This is our system, Holstein system, to do 3D linear trait evaluation that we talked about at last year's meeting. What are some other things that you can do that might involve going to Amazon or Best Buy or Walmart instead of going to a typical technology provider? One neat area that we could look at is putting an accelerometer onto the headlock bar. Accelerometers are the base technology that we all have in our cell phones. They're in all your wearable technologies, and they're in all the Fitbits and smartwatches and so forth. But an accelerometer just measures motion. And so we can put an accelerometer on a headlock, and as that headlock moves, to tell us if that headlock is open or closed, to give us an alert if we've locked cows up too long, or if somebody left the cows locked up when they shouldn't have, which I will admit I've been guilty of in my life. Monitoring cameras we talked about. Equipment tractors, we can put sensors on our skid steer, on our tractors to log how much something's being used, or log timing of when feed's being pushed up and that sort of thing. We can put sensors on our gates, so we don't have to worry about when somebody left a gate open or closed a gate that they shouldn't have. We can put sensors on our water meters to be able to identify a water that's not working properly before it becomes a cow problem. And we can put environmental loggers in our barns to be able to get real-time conditions for weather within the barn. So these are all technologies that we can invest in for less than $300 to have an impact on farm that don't involve a lot of infrastructure. The other area to think about is apps. So there's a lot of opportunities to use apps. I'm sure many of you use apps, so things to think about: your calculator app, a weather app, a compass to be able to help determine where to put a barn or that sort of thing, a bubble level, translator to help communicate with your employees, a light meter. I have light meters on my phone. Light meters are really helpful to understand cow movement. They measure light in lux to understand where cows might be going away from the sun in the summertime, for example. Cameras, of course, there's lots we can do there. Voice notes, remote desktop to log into the main computer, and then group messaging for our employees. So there's lots we can do with apps for our phone that don't take a lot of money. And of course, there are dairy specific apps like the Zisk app that can help you track profits on your phone, CME app, herd management software. Many of you have various herd management software programs on your farm, on your phone, body condition scoring or locomotion. There are apps out there to do milking timing, so we can time the people in the milking parlor. We get all these alerts for cows that are in heat or cows that are sick from all the wearable technologies. We can put bulk tank monitors on to be able to help assess when the agitator was turned on, what's the temperature of the milk in the bulk tank. Lots of things, of course, we can do to monitor in the parlor and the robot. We can monitor pulsators. We can monitor a lot of the equipment, not just the cows, but also monitor the equipment. And then, of course, looking at milk and market prices on our phones also. Another tool that I've found useful in my work at the Smart Holstein Lab is a smart plug. How many of you have smart plugs in your home anywhere? Just a couple people. I have a few. I think they can be really useful. Where I find it useful on a farm is in my level of troubleshooting for a technology. Now, I'm not an engineer. So, what's my first solution for any time one of the technologies is broken? Turn it off and turn it back on. So, when I put, believe me, it works most of the time. But turn it off, turn it back on is my solution for every technology. And then I have to call somebody because that's usually the limit of my technical capability. Well, these smart plugs allow me to do that remotely. So I put a smart plug in, and then I plug in whatever technology I have to the smart plug. Like the one that I use it for the most is that bird camera that I showed you. Somehow that bird camera forgets to do its job sometimes, and I can look at it, see it's offline. I can remote start it from my home. I could remote start it from here and power cycle that without having to go to the farm to unplug and plug that back in. These can be really, really useful solutions. You can find these for $10 or $15, and you can put them into any plug to reboot something that's not working. You can put it on a schedule if you wanted something to turn on or off on certain times of the day. It can help you with power losses. You can even find some that are fancy ones that'll track the amount of energy uses. This is one of the simplest things you can do to help troubleshoot a technology or something that you need to plug in. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit, and we'll finish up talking quite a bit about artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence is the biggest breakthrough for the dairy industry since the TMR. The total mixed ration was a massive change in how we managed cows. And I think artificial intelligence is also that level of change. We're going to see this in every aspect of what we do in the operation. Dr. Weigel talked about this earlier, about machine learning and artificial intelligence. I know sometimes it's a scary term. It's a little confusing as to what it is, but artificial intelligence is basically learning from data, looking at patterns in data to help automate decisions and do more predictive analytics for what's going to happen in the future. So with AI, the machines actually learn, they adapt, and they improve over time. Yes, the computers get smarter, the systems get smarter. The specific area of large language models that I want to talk about the most right now is what's called a large language model. Large language models would be things like ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, Gemini, Grok, Perplexity. There's a bunch of them out there. What these do is they speak in English. They read in plain terms, they read in English, and they speak back in plain English. They learn from patterns in books and articles and websites, not necessarily from your specific farm. They can run on your phone, they can run on the computer. You don't need any hardware to be able to use these. It's a tool that costs you relatively little that can help you a lot. So artificial intelligence means, like I said, the machine predicts from data what it sees and the patterns that it sees. It's, in the end, it's just math and statistics. It's not science fiction. In reality, dairy's been using some form of artificial intelligence for 20 years or more. We've just seen a massive change in about the last 2 to 3 years because of some major advancements in this large language model arena. The large language model arena is what's increased the discussion about artificial intelligence. And these technologies run faster and better than ever before. I do want to say that AI is partly large language models, but it's a lot more than large language models. It includes other types of machine learning applied to data, like Dr. Weigel talked about earlier. It includes computer vision, robotics, sensors, predictive models. There's a lot more going on in artificial intelligence than just large language models. Here's an example of what we can do with a large language model. A few months ago, I took the DHI herd summary from ATA for the WKU herd, and I put it into ChatGPT. And I said, give me a summary of this herd, give me this herd's strengths and weaknesses, and put it into a dashboard format. That was all I said. And in about a minute, it gave me this nice dashboard that has a number of key performance indicators for the farm and tells me the strengths and weaknesses of this farm. Within a minute, it did this. And again, I work with this herd extensively, and it's mostly right. It really identified what I would view the good things and the bad things about this herd. It's not perfect. There are a couple of things that it didn't get quite right, and I could have gone back and given it some feedback. Like there's some things here, this is a small herd that I think it's over-interpreting data for a small herd, and I could have told it, you're over-interpreting that, and it probably would have pulled back from that. But really amazing to me what we can do with just a simple prompt like that in a very short period of time. So is AI always right? How many of you are using large language models or have ever used ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, that sort of thing? Okay, maybe 40% of the room. So has it ever been wrong? Yeah, it definitely can be wrong. But guess what? We're all wrong sometimes too, right? So one of the best phrases that I've heard used to describe AI is it's like your best friend that thinks they know everything, but they probably don't. But the reality is those people that tend to think they know everything actually probably do know a lot. And they're wrong sometimes. And that's AI. We have to use AI with some skepticism to say, I know things that AI doesn't, but it knows things that I don't. And it can really help us a lot. So some myths about AI. AI will replace farmers. No, it won't. We still need people on the farm. AI is too expensive for my farm. Not right now. It's not. You can use these tools. Many of them have free versions, but you can also even step up and pay $20 a month or $30 a month or whatever. Some people say it's too complicated to use. I don't understand that. If you can talk, my mom asked me not long ago, she goes, I keep hearing about this. I think I need to do it. Can you help me figure out how to do it? And I said, Mom, just talk to it. You speak to it just like you would a person. It's really easy. It interprets your language. It also gets to know you a little bit. Sometimes AI, it's a little bit scary sometimes what it knows about me. It knows, for example, that if I ask a concept and I want to understand something, if I say, explain to me this statistical analysis technique, guess what AI does for me? It always uses a cow example without me telling it to use a cow example because it knows I like to do cow data. It knows that about me. It does not make perfect decisions. You still have to make the decision in the end. But AI can help you make better decisions. A lot of these tools are either free or they have a relatively inexpensive monthly fee. Modern AI is totally conversation-based. It's just like talking to another person. It's a tool, but you still make the final call. There are things that AI will never replace. AI is never going to replace good stockmanship, being able to work with cows, being that good cow sense that you all have. It's never going to replace relationships. Relationships are extremely important in life and in our business. it's not going to replace good judgment calls. It's like the example of the person driving into the lake, because that's the direction that's said to go. You've got to use your judgment sometime not to do that. It can't be as compassionate as we can about animals. It can't make the final decisions, and it can't understand everything about your farm. On the other hand, it can understand anything you tell it about your farm. So if you tell it, I milk 146 cows in such and such Minnesota, and I have Holsteins, and the production, it takes all that into the context of your situation. What are things that large language models can do for you? This is not an exhaustive list, but these are things that AI can do. It can summarize a research paper. You take a complicated research paper from some good scientist like Dr. Weigel or Dr. Graham, and you put it into ChatGPT or Claude, and it can describe it, and you tell it, I'm not a PhD. Don't write like you're talking to a PhD. Write like you're talking to a 56-year-old farmer from Kansas. Or write it like you're talking to a 5-year-old kid, and that's the way it will write it. It can draft employee standard operating procedures and training materials. It can analyze DHI data. It can generate interview questions for you for when you're hiring a new employee. It can help you troubleshoot equipment problems. It can help you translate documents for multilingual staff. It can create social media content. It can help explain nutritional concepts. That's honestly the area that I use, not nutrition, but the area that I use AI the most is for helping me understand something that I don't know. I want to understand a topic, a new topic to me. How can I do this? I've used this in my personal life. We bought some property, and we've been building a little wildlife area there, and I knew nothing about trees or plants because I'm just a cow guy. And I wanted to do something that was ecologically diverse and have different kinds of wildlife and so forth. And I planned this thing out using Claude, and it's helped me understand trees to the point that when I went to the place to go buy some trees, they said, wow, you really know a lot about trees. And I'm like, no, I don't know anything about trees. I just know how to use artificial intelligence. Now, I'll give you some examples of where it cannot help me, and this is the common sense things. I also have used it to identify what's already there. And one example was one day I used it to take a picture of the poison ivy after I touched the poison ivy. So it can't replace. I said, what is this? And they said, that's poison ivy. Don't touch it. Well, for the next 2 weeks, I realized that I should not have touched that. So AI can't replace common sense, right? But it can really help. It's amazing what I've been able to put together there with using artificial intelligence. It can help you with regulatory compliance questions. It can help you brainstorm solutions to management challenges, personnel challenges. Like I've asked it, I'm having trouble with this particular issue, with this particular scenario. How do I deal with this? And it can provide some interesting advice for that. So how do you get good at using AI? And by no means do I consider myself an expert on this. I'm still learning. Be specific with what you ask it. Be specific with your prompts. So don't go in and say, tell me about mastitis. That's very broad. That's very vague. If you're more specific, you say, I have a 500 cow Holstein herd with an increasing somatic cell count. Help me create a mastitis prevention protocol for my fresh cows. That gives context. It specifies the format, and you set constraints. Tell it you want 200 words, you want 6 pages, whatever you want. And one of the most important things to recognize when using artificial intelligence is that the first question you ask is usually not enough. You have to follow up and ask additional questions. So it's like a conversation. You want to know a little bit more. Oh, I didn't mean that. I meant this. Well, tell me that in a way that I can understand this, because I'm not a forestry expert. I'm not an expert on people management. Whatever the issue is, it can help you with that. So it can do a lot of those things that we talked about earlier. Remember, it can't see your farm. It can't replace your vet or your nutritionist. I'm amazed at some of the things it can do in some of those areas sometimes. I had a friend of mine that was a dairy producer in Kentucky, and he uploaded all of his feed analyses into one of the AI models and said, balance my ration. And he said it was really, really close to what his nutrition had balanced. So it's pretty amazing what it can do there. But it can't replace all the other pieces of what your nutritionist does. It can't promise you that it's correct. It's not always right. It doesn't always remember between chats. It's getting better at that. It doesn't necessarily know your cows, and it doesn't make that final decision. When thinking about making those prompts, make sure you're specific, give context to the scenario, make sure you understand who you're talking to or who you want it to be talking to. Give it examples sometimes of what you want to see, and remember, the first question isn't really the key. So how do we think about writing a really powerful prompt? So set the role. Tell it, you're a dairy nutritionist with 20 years of experience. You've got this goal. You're going to write in this situation. Here's my herd-specific scenario. Give it constraints for what to consider within that. Tell it you want an email, you want a table, you want a graph, you want a 6-page PDF, whatever you want. Tell it who to write for. Write for a farmer, not for a PhD. Write for a PhD, not for a farmer. Whatever you want it to do, and tell it the link for what you want to do. It's really amazing how much you can do with file uploads. So you can upload almost anything into a large language model. So you can upload a PDF, a Word document, a spreadsheet, pictures. I use it all the time for pictures of things on, again, mainly on looking at this plant project right now. But it's amazing what it can identify there. You can even take it to help you solve a problem with a piece of equipment, or it can access the manual and dig that up. Really, really, really cool what it can do. Keep asking it those follow-up questions. Start broad, narrow down as you move forward. And you can save things also. There are some guardrails to think about. It can sound certain and still be wrong. It can make up things. So you can tell it, though, don't make anything up. Or give me the resources. Give me the references. Now you have to be a little skeptical again. I have had it reference me for things that I never wrote. It sounded like something that could have been real, but I never wrote that from the journal of some journal that I've never heard of. Don't act on a drug dosage, withdrawal time, or regulation without checking it. Those are things you can really get yourselves in trouble for. Don't post private financial or employee information into a public tool. And make sure to ask, you can tell it. Tell me if you don't know. If you're not confident, tell me that. Treat it like a good intern. They can be fast and useful, but you probably wouldn't take all their advice as a brand new intern. Should you use the free or the paid version? I think the free ones are a great way to get started. And if you're just using it here and there, they're great. If you're really going to get into using it often, or using it for more sensitive information, get into the paid versions. The paid versions are a little bit more secure. I want to stop by saying there's lots of discussion about artificial intelligence, and you're going to hear a lot more about this in moving forward. It's not perfect. Large language models are only one part of this scenario. There are broader concerns about security and the impact that large language models have on the environment and the need for more data centers and so forth. There are all those issues that we have to grapple with as a society. But today they're here, they're real. one of the things that I hear people talk about is it going to replace jobs? It is. It's already replacing jobs, and it will continue to replace some jobs in some industries. And we all have to think about that competitively to say, how can I best use this so that I'm not the one that gets left behind? And the best phrasing I've heard this is that AI won't always replace you in your role, but the people that use AI effectively will replace those that don't. All right. Thank you all for your time.
That was Dr. Jeffrey Bewley's presentation, Technology Investments That Pay Off, recorded during Holstein Horizons at the 2026 National Holstein Convention. Throughout his talk, Dr. Bewley emphasized that successful technology adoption isn't always about chasing the latest trend. Instead, it's about identifying challenges, evaluating value, and choosing tools that fit your operation and management style. He also highlighted the growing role of artificial intelligence and practical ways producers can begin incorporating these tools into some of their daily decision-making. Thank you for joining us for Dr. Jeffrey Bewley's Holstein Horizons presentation. To access additional recorded Holstein Horizons speaker content from Holstein Association USA, visit our YouTube channel. For more member stories, educational content, and the latest news from the association, be sure to subscribe and follow the Holstein Connections podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode of Holstein Connections. Whether you're in the barn, on the road, or just tuning in for your dose of dairy news, we're glad you're here. Until next time, this is Holstein Connections.